we go. Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, thank you for coming. Thank you. I hope everyone who's watching online can hear me as well. We are studying together Tzurba Rabbanan. We're coming to the end of volume 1. Volume 1, we've been looking at various topics in Yoradea, Dazarach, magic, etc. Last week we spoke about superstition, sorcery, divinations. We're going to take a bit of a switch today. We move from Yoradea towards Orach Chaim, and after today, I'm going to skip to currently volume 13, maybe volume 14 if it's ready in time, but we'll don't worry, the books will be provided and we'll have all the material that we need. But today we're going to talk a little bit about Hilchot Purim. Purim is coming up. It's not that far away in the book. We'll get to page 265. But we're not quite yet. This week we have Shabbat in Ramadan, and just over 3 weeks away is Purim. We know there is a halacha. The Gemara in Pesachim tells us that 30 days, 30 yom lifnei Chag, sholim v'dorshin Hilchot Chag. 30 days before the Chag comes around. Now the Gemara over there is talking about Pesach. In fact, about right at the Sudat Purim. Purim is 30 days before Pesach. But Purim is 30 days before Pesach. So at the Sudat Purim, we start learning the halachot of Pesach. So right back. But there is a question in the question discussed. Would this halacha apply to other chagim as well? Is it just something which is unique to Pesach? Pesach, as we know, has many halachot. Not only that, but it has halachot which you have to know beforehand, because if you only find out too late, you can't fix it. And you have by your or by your matzah. You have to know well in advance how to clean your house, how to get rid of your chametz, how to make the matzah, etc. All those things we need to have ready in time for Pesach, and therefore the Gemara, everybody agrees. I was talking about that. In fact, there are two opinions in the Gemara. One says it's enough 2 weeks before. One says we need to start learning 30 days before. Mishnah Berurah discusses, would this halacha apply to other chagim as well, to other festivals? And either it does or doesn't, but there's a strict requirement. It's a good idea before we get to the chag to start learning, start reviewing the halachot. It's interesting that Purim, in a sense, maybe has one of the chagim that has many halachot, even though it's a Rabbanan. But with many mitzvot, in a similar way to Pesach, generally speaking, we come to a chag, there's one mitzvah, Chanukah, you have to light your candle, Rosh Hashanah, you have to hear the shofar. You come to Pesach, and Seder, we know there are many different mitzvot on Seder night. Purim as well. Purim has 4 distinct mitzvot, which we have to fulfill. We have the Seudah, we have the Megillah, we have Mishloach Manot, we have Matanot Levyonim. That's on Purim itself. Before Purim, we have Taanit Esther, we have zecher, lemachtsit, hashekel, Shabbat Zachor, etc. So many halachot, many things to know. So let us review some of those halachot and look at some of the interesting things which come up. So in the book, page 265, before Purim, as we know, we have Taanit Esther. We have a fast. Interesting. And this fast is a different status. I'd say a more lenient status than the other fast days, which we. Why do we have a fast on Taanit Esther? Why do we need to fast the days before Purim? And essentially, there are 3 different reasons which are more, maybe more. There are at least 3. The one is everybody knows that in the story of the Megillah, Esther fasted right before before she goes into the king, goes into Achashverosh. She fasts for 3 days. She says to Mordechai. There is an opinion. See, in fact, I think if you look on page 266, you see the Mishnah Berurah, source number 3. Source number 3 in our books, it says, Ki b'mei Mordechai v'Esther, nikalu b'yom yudgimo b'adar l'nachem v'la'amod al nafsham, היו צריכים לבקש רחמים ותחנונים שעזרים השם וינקם לאויביהם. We're going to come back to this. Instead, on Yudgimo b'adar, the day before Purim, the Jews got together to fight. And not only did they go out and fight, but they davened to Hashem, they fasted. V'nikra Taanit Esther, they discourse Hashem yitbarach le'eh v'shomah k'lish v'etzor Hashem yit'aneh v'yashuv al Hashem b'chol levavo. Why is it called Taanit Esther? To remind us that Hashem sees and hears every person, every individual who cries out and who fasts at the time of trouble and turns to Hashem with tshuva, just as it was in those days. So Esther herself fasted as a result of the situation before she went to Achashverosh. However, that fast, we know, did not take place on Yud Gimel B'Adar. That was only almost a year later, when Haman had cast his lots and it was meant to come out, and that he was going to go and kill all the Jewish people. And as we know, thankfully, everything was reversed, and we would say, but when did she fast? When did Esther actually fast? That was on Pesach. That's it, right? This is another one of the many connections between Purim and Pesach. You read through the Megillah and you realize that much of the story of Purim actually took place on Pesach. In and of itself, very interesting. We know, however, that we don't fast during the month of Nisan. There, it was a Horat Sha'ah, it was before Nefesh, right? That was why she fasted on Pesach. And in fact, the Midrash, a very interesting discussion which takes place between Mordechai and Esther regarding this very fact. And Esther says to Mordechai that we're going to go and fast. And Mordechai said, how can you fast at Pesach? You don't fast. And Esther says to Mordechai, if there's no Jewish people, there's no Pesach. Right? This is something, again, what exactly was the Havamina? At another time, what was Mordechai thinking? Why was that the case? But certainly Pikuach Nefesh, which is okay, everything, and that was an exceptional circumstance. So we do not, as a remembrance, fast every day, I said, thankfully. But there is an opinion that, as a remembrance of that fast, which Esther fasted, we have a fast which is associated with Purim, that is called Taanit Esther. Since it cannot be in the month of Nisan, it is brought close the day before Purim. That is one understanding, one opinion. So Rosh, going back at source number 1, it's a little bit different from me. And there are a number of poskim who say the following. He says, Piresh Rabbeinu Tam. Says the Rosh in the name of Rabbeinu Tam, of Malach. He says, Man Kehila Nakol. Mara says that this day of Yud Gimel Be'adar is Nisman Kehila. It's the day of gathering. Everybody gathers together. For what was this gathering? Nisman Kehila. Shehakol mitasvin leTaanit Esther. ובאים בני הכפרים לעיירות, כלומר סביבות התחנונים, לפי שבו נקראו לעמוד על נפשם, והיו צריכים רחמים. The Gemara in Megillah, the very beginning, talks about different days in which the Megillah could be read, those in the villages, those in the cities, etc. On Gimel Be'adar, everybody would get together to come and say Slichot and Tzachamanim to fast. Why? לפי שבו נקראו לעמוד על נפשם, this was the day that everybody gathered together to daven for their life and for mercy. And not with the story that the Megillah tells us when Esther fasted. But there was another day, right? The happy ending, which we know at the end, when the Jews went and they fought for their lives and they were saved. But that was the day that we're going into, there was a decree that Haman and the Amalekites are going to kill all the Jews, and they gathered together to fight and to defend themselves. That was on the day of Yud Gimel Be'adar. And when going into war, one has to daven, one has to fast, one has to turn to Hashem in prayer. And as a remembrance of that time, of that Zman Kehila, that is why we have the fast of Taanit Esther on Yud Gimel Be'adar. Continuously Rosh, source number 1, about halfway through, after the 3 dots, he says, Mikam Yerena Rabbeinu Tam Sa'ad, the Taanit Esther She'shan Waseh. He says, from here, we see this seems to be a support for this fast. Again, this is a fast which is not mentioned explicitly, not in Divrei Nevi'im, not in Divrei Tuvim, and it comes later, and that's why it is more lenient. Just like in the days of Mordechai and Esther, the Jews gathered together to defend themselves. There's no other source about it explicitly that one has to fast on this day, except for here. So that is the Rosh. So essentially, according to both of these explanations, the Taanit Esther is a remembrance of something which took place in the Megillah. Is it the remembrance of the fast we know about explicitly, which took place on a different day? Or is it a remembrance of the Zman Kehila, which we know took place on this day, but there's no explicit mention of the fast? There is a third explanation, by the way, which is brought by the Maggid. The Beit Yosef had a chavrutza who used to come down from Shamayim. That is, and he has a zecher where he talks about some of the things which the Maggid, sort of a malach, came and told him. One of the things he said was that you have to fast before the day of Purim, because we have to be careful. Purim is a day of feasting, of Sudah and Mishteh, and eating and drinking, and maybe a little bit of lightheadedness more than we normally would permit. And therefore, in order to retain some sort of, not to go overboard, so we have a fast the day before. That's brought in the Magid Mishnah. So whichever one it is, the Shulchan Aruch, source number 2, tells us that we have this custom to fast on Yud Gimel Be'adar. But again, since this does not have an explicit source, not in the Nevi'im and in Tuvim. It is a more lenient fast, and therefore people who are ill, people who are unwell, even in a minor sense, would therefore be exempt. He says, "Mitanim b'Yom Be'adam, v'Yom Purim b'Echad b'Shabbat, mekimim mitanot b'Yom Chamishi." So we fast on the 13th of Adar. If Purim falls out on Echad b'Shabbat on a Sunday, and therefore Yud Gimel would be a Shabbat, so then the fast is brought forward to Thursday. But that says the Ramah, Taanit Esther, it is now the minhag that we have to fast, but it is more lenient, and therefore we go in mubarot or meditot, and therefore pregnant women or those who are nursing or somebody who is ill, not people of nefesh, even a kodesh in sakana would be exempt from the source. Now, one of the advantages that we always have in Yerushalayim is the fact that we have Purim a day later. So normally speaking, how would be after Yud Gimel Be'adar, the Taanit Esther, one should not break the fast, one should certainly not have a full meal until after hearing the Megillah. If we read the Megillah a day later anyway, we don't have to wait for that, and then we can break our fast at nightfall and come in and hear the Megillah very not be worried about being hungry and concentrated, etc. Okay, but that is essentially Taanit Esther. We turn over the page to page 267. We have another mitzvah which precedes Purim, another custom that we have, which is zecher lemachtsit hashekel. Not a direct related to Purim, but we know there used to be. There was a custom that on Rosh Chodesh Adar, in the beginning of Chodesh Adar, they would announce for people to bring shkalim to the Beit HaMikdash. Right? Everybody would have to bring this half a shekel, or it was used for the different korbanot, tzibur, and other purposes in the Beit HaMikdash. One of the things every day, the Beit HaMikdash, we have the korban tamid, for example, korban tamid, which is brought on behalf of everybody. It's not an individual offering. Is a korban tzibur. How is that done? So there is a certain part of money which comes from everybody, from the entire nation, and all the korbanot are brought together from that. So it's brought in front of Rosh Chodesh Adar. It would be announced for two reasons. One is because the new fan starts and begins from Nisan, which is the next month. So Chazal tell us that Haman weighed out his money, and we want to weigh out our money before. We want to get there before him, and he was on the beginning of Adar, so already the beginning of Adar. So in the days of the Beit HaMikdash, when we bring this lemachtsit hashekel to the Mikdash, nowadays we can't bring the actual lemachtsit hashekel because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash. But we give money to tzedakah, we got zecher lemachtsit hashekel. It is a remembrance of lemachtsit hashekel. It's very important. When a person picks up the coins, and they donate it, and they say, I'm giving this money, zecher lemachtsit hashekel. If a person says, I'm giving this is lemachtsit hashekel, that's very bad, because then you are essentially making it hektish. You are saying you are donating something, for the purposes of the Mikdash, and then it cannot be used. And so one should be careful to say zecher. It's brought up in other contexts. For example, Mishnah Berurah has a discussion. It says when somebody buys meat for Pesach, so if a person, what happens if a person says, Basar zeh lePesach? Right? You say this meat is for Pesach. It's in the Mishnah. So there is a korban Pesach. You got to be careful. Don't say it's for korban Pesach. If you say Basar zeh leChag, and this meat is for the Chag or something like that, then that's fine. There's no question. But he discusses what happens if a person, we have to be careful with the words that we use, not to insinuate, not to dedicate it as a korban. So says the Ramah over here, source number 4, page 267. יש אומרים שיש ליתן קודם כל לemachtsit מן המטבע הקבוע באותו מקום ובאותו זמן זכר לemachtsit השקל שהיו נותנים באדם. Says the Ramah, we have a custom to give a half, just as then it was half a shekel, so too we give half a coin. Whatever the currency is in that place and at that time, we're in Israel, so the currency is a shekel. If in America, the currency is $1, right? You would give half the half coin of that currency. He continues. It says, "Me'achar sheshlosha pe'amim katuv truma b'parasha." Since the word truma is written in 3 different collections, the word truma is written 3 times. Yesh litain gimel. Therefore, some have the custom to give 3 coins. Not just 1 half shekel, but 3 half shekels. The Vilna Gaon says you should just give 1. The Rambam says you should give 3. That is the psak of the Ramah. That is the Ashkenazi part. There are those The Sephardi custom is, and Ovadia writes this and others, to say that no, what is the zecher lemachtsit shekel? Just as then, it was half the silver shekel, the amount of the half a shekel. So if we were to take the weight and to take the equivalent value of that, that's the amount that one should give. We have these coins which are weighted, which are meant to be like the lemachtsit shekel, and then a person puts in their money, puts in the amount, and picks up those coins to satisfy, put them back in the box, and that satisfies both those opinions. How much would this come out to? So over here, and this was printed already a few years ago, so the inflation is changed. But it says here on page 268 that if one wanted to give that amount, the 9.6 grams of silver in 2017 was valued at approximately 20 shekels in Israeli currency. You can work out how much that will be worth today. But that is according to the Sephardi custom. But according to the Ramah, it's sufficient just to give the actual half of the currency, half a shekel, 3 half shekel coins, and that is given on Taanit Esther, that is given before Megillah, before Purim comes in. And that money is then given to tzedakah. This is separate from the mitzvah of matanot le'evyonim, which we'll talk about a little bit later. The zecher lemachtsit, which is a custom. It's always a good thing to give money to tzedakah, but the actual obligation of matanot le'evyonim is separate from it, and that is on Purim Day itself. So let's go through. So those are really the things which precede Purim. It said Taanit Esther, zecher lemachtsit. There's also Shabbat Zachor, where we mentioned we had a reading of Kriyat Hamalek in the Torah. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit when we talk about the Megillah, that we don't have the sources about Shabbat Zachor in the text in front of us. But let's talk about now the Megillah, the central mitzvah, again, one of the 4 mitzvot of the day of Purim. It's the only one which is actually a mitzvah at the night and during the day. And page 269 says the Gemara near the beginning of the second Megillah, source number 6. Amar Rabbi Kenigsberg, Amar Rabbi Tzurba, חייב אדם לקרוא את המגילה בלילה ומשנותיו ביום, שנאמר למען ישמח כבוד וכבודו שם רקאי לעולם עולם. So the quotes the pasuk from Tehillim. Says the Gemara, we have a mitzvah, חייב אדם, obligated to read the Megillah both at night and משנותיו ביום, to go back and to repeat it during the day. This is quite unique. Usually we find we have a mitzvah either it's during the night, during the day, once, but the mitzvah is read the Megillah. It's not enough just to read it at night, not enough just to hear it during the day. One has to do both. And that both together is the performance of them. Obviously, for whatever reason, the person was unable to, there was some sort of honest or some extenuating circumstance. The person didn't hear the Megillah at night, they should still go and hear it during the day, and vice versa. But really the fear is to hear both. Rashi over here, we don't have Rashi in front of us, but we have a text box with an explanation of what he said. He said that in the verse quoted, he explained the phrase, may sing praise to you from Tehillim, that refers to reading the Megillah once, and the phrase not be silent, lo yidom, refers to reading it the second time. He explains further, since the Megillah is to read and praise Hashem for saving the Jew, reading it is considered singing praise. Very interesting, just a thought. Why is it that we have to hear the Megillah during the night and again during the day? So we'll see later on. The Gemara says, and it's brought in Shulchan that Hakoreh Megillah Mafreya Lo Yatsa. If you read it out of order, you've not fulfilled the mitzvah. And again, this comes up sometimes. You have to hear every single word of the Megillah. What happens if a person is sitting in shul and they hear the Baal and somebody coughs, or they cough, or somebody hits them, and you miss a word, or you miss a pasuk? What do? So we'll talk about that in a moment. But you have to hear the whole Megillah in order. It can't be you miss one pasuk, and at the end you go back and say those words again. You've got to hear the whole thing in the correct, in the proper way, and in the proper order. So some of the Hasidim explain, taking this halakha and sort of a Hasidic brush, Tivot Shalom and others write the following. They say, Hakoreh Megillah Mafreya. Mafreya means retroactively, means out of order. You read the Megillah in Mafreya. You read it backwards. You read it thinking that it's talking about something that happened once upon a time, but it's not relevant now. It's not part of your life. Lo Yatsa. We have to understand the Megillah is still talking. We have to see this whole picture. We have to see this whole story of the Megillah as one continuous story of Jewish destiny, and that's how we can understand. That's how we can understand its relevance. More than that, He says, the whole, what is unique about the story of the Megillah, as we know, is that it only makes sense once you come to the end. All sorts of disparate parts, all sorts of things, this first, the first couple of chapters in the Megillah have nothing to do with anything. This party of Hashverosh and Suda and whatever it is. And it's only once you get to the end, all of a sudden, all the pieces start into place. Everything starts to make sense. Now we understand why Esther was taken away from her home and she had to be, imprisoned. But she was in prison in this palace with this Persian king. Now we understand why Mordecai was where he was and why he heard what he heard and why Haman was there. Everything only makes sense once we get to the end. So maybe there's an idea. The first time, we're hearing the Megillah at night. You've got to read the whole story from the beginning, not so clear. You go through, you get to the end. Now it all makes sense. Now we understand. Okay, next day, Yishmat HaBeyom. Let's read the Megillah again. Let's read the whole story once again, and now we can understand from the beginning everything that's going to. So that's not yet, but again, the field, the halacha is when he used to hear it twice, says the Shulchan Aruch in source number 7. Chayav Adam mikrot Megillah b'layla v'lachzor b'shnota b'yom. The person needs to read the Megillah at night, and then to go back and to repeat it once again during the day. Now, what is considered night and what is considered day? And the Mishnah talks about this, and Shulchan Aruch brings it out. It says night is the entire night. From Hanetzach Hama, from essentially sunrise and until the end of the day. The Imkra Mishalam Yatsa. And if I read it earlier, already from daybreak, when is then fulfilled their obligation. This is what the Mishnah says in Megillah. The talks about it, that any mitzvot that we have during the day, the ideal time is to begin from Hanetzach Hama. Why? Once upon a time, we didn't have clocks. We didn't have, I think I've mentioned before, I once studied in a shul where they had, in front by the shtender, where the Chazan stands, they had a table of the times, they had a minyan vatik, and they had the exact time to the minute and to the second of when the Chazan had to say, Shema, when he had to say Amidah, etc. Chazal, they didn't have clocks, they didn't have times to the second. Chazal taught us that times manayom, based on daybreak, based on sunrise, etc., things that we can see and things we can understand. So there's always a concern that the time from daybreak to sunrise, it's not clear whether that is night, whether it's day, whether it's begun or not. And therefore we say that a mitzvah of the day should begin from sunrise, which is a bit later, when it will certainly be day. But the person did it earlier, that's okay, so long as it's from daybreak. But it was ideally, you shouldn't put oneself in that situation, so as not to get confused. But that is the Megillah. It can be read at night, it can be read at day, throughout the day. It's better, like with just about all mitzvah, it's better to read it as early as possible. The principle of reason, like 10 minutes, try and do things as early as we can, and we don't want to forget. We don't want to miss.
Is there such a thing as tashlumin? The guy missed it at night. So does he have to read it twice during the day, or once enough?
No, so there wouldn't be. It's an interesting question because we know that we have such a concept. So that would not be the case by the Megillah. Meaning, as I said before, first, if a person missed it at night, you missed it at night. You should still do it during the day. Still performance of the mitzvah. But no, there wouldn't be any to read it twice. Okay, let's talk about the brachot. Continuing on page 269 underneath. So the Gemara says, what are the brachot before reading the Megillah? Rav Sheshet becomes Mikavtazia, Ikra lekamedra Hashi, Ubarif, Manach. The Gemara gives us a little bit cryptically, it gives us an acronym. It says that the brachot before the Megillah are Manach. What does Manach mean? Over the page, you'll see Rashi says there are three brachot we say before the Megillah. Each of these letters, Mem stands for Al Mikra Megillah. That is the standard Birkat HaMitzvot, which we say for Megillah, which we say for any mitzvah. And Nun is She'asa Nisim, which we say, the bracha we say by Purim and Hanukkah, and regarding miracles. And finally, Chet stands for She'heftel Yam, the bracha of She'heftel. Now, and this is brought down in Shulchan Aruch, that one says these three brachot. She'heftel, would that then be said at night and during the day? She'heftel is a bracha which we say only for when there's a certain mitzvah certain mitzvah we have not fulfilled for a year, for a certain occasion that comes once a year, every time said once, but once you fulfill the mitzvah, and do you say it again? This question comes up by Rosh Hashanah, the second day of Rosh Hashanah, comes up by Tzkiat Shofar, and there's a machloket over there between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, whether the Baal Tokeh can say the bracha of Shechianu the second day when he blows the Tzkiat Shofar. Generally, the poskim say second day of Rosh Hashanah, you should have a new beged, we should have a new fruit as well. But this year, Rosh Hashanah, Baal Tokeh walked in, pulled down an avocado. He said, "No, I have a new fruit." You could say, "We get Shechianu." I think he was wearing a new tie as well. So that was the. So regarding Shechianu by the Megillah, so we'll again. Said Shulchan Aruch. Before reading the Megillah, you say 3 brachot. There's the Shulchan Aruch that once you've said the brachot on the mitzvah, you can say it again. But the brachot Shechianu, once it's been said at night, you don't repeat it during the day. That is the Shulchan Aruch. The Rambam says, "Yesh omrim Shechianu v'cheinu agir b'kol hadinut." Says the Rambam, how many years? Yes, during the day one would say the bracha, one would repeat the bracha of Shechianu as well. Why is that? Says the Magen Avraham. So it's not really that. And if there's the current mitzvah, it's so the primary meaning of the Megillah during the day, and therefore the bracha of Shechianu would be said during the day as well. Now that's what we do. That is our right? Now, in addition to that, so first of all, so can you understand why we're saying this? These brachot are only recited by one person. They're recited by the one who is saying doing the reading, but they're saying them on behalf, not just of him himself, but on behalf of the entire tzibur. So everybody has in mind, we don't answer Baruch Hu Baruch Shmo, because these are brachot we are fulfilling our obligation as well. We answer Amen, and we have in mind, what else do we have to have in mind when we hear these brachot? Says the Mishnah Berurah, source number 12. Is that Nachon Yisrael Berkat Shechianu, Gam HaMishloach Manot Yisudat Bolim, Shem Gam Ken Mitzvot, V'Yodia Zen Hashem Valech Devay Kavanat Shomei Mashma. He says essentially when we're saying the bracha, he should have in mind as well. And once listening, should have in mind the bracha of Shechianu during the day applies not just for the mitzvah of hearing the Megillah, but also for the mitzvah of Hilchot Purim, also for the mitzvah of Mishloach Manot. He doesn't mention how much not seemingly that would be would apply for those as well. And then with Shechianu have in mind for all of the mitzvot of the day of Purim. Now that in itself raises another interesting question. If you're saying Shechianu, you're having in mind for all other mitzvot of the day of Purim, what about the mitzvah? What about the other? What about why don't say a bracha? We say a bracha before fulfilling this mitzvah of Mikra Megillah. We don't say a bracha before Mishloach Manot. We don't say a bracha of Mechilot Levionim. We don't say a bracha for the Seudah, for the food. We don't say a bracha over that. And if you'll answer, well, those are only mitzvot Rabbanan, well, Mikra Megillah is also a mitzvah Rabbanan. And that's what the Gemara says regarding the Rosh Hashanah as well. How can we say the bracha? Hashem Yishanu b'mitzvotav. And how can you say that Hashem has commanded us to do mitzvot when these are mitzvot Rabbanan? One of the answers is Hashem said, listen to the enactments of Chazal, listen to the enactments of the rabbis, and therefore commanded in that as well. But so a lot of different answers are given as to why there is no bracha for the other mitzvot of Purim. One of the answers is that whenever you have a mitzvah which is dependent on somebody else, you don't say a bracha because you might not. We don't say. There are many mitzvot b'yad ha'bracha v'nerah, mitzvot tzedakah, mitzvot bikor kolim, mitzvot kibud avayim, many different mitzvot. We don't say a bracha before fulfilling it. So one of the answers is you might go to give somebody mishloach manot, and he might not take it. They might not be there. They might give it back to you. Whatever it is. So then you have not fulfilled the mitzvah. There is another answer, beautiful answer of the Sfat Emet, which he says this is regarding many mitzvot. In many mitzvot. Why don't we say it? Says, imagine a scenario. When a person is about to go and visit somebody else. The person is about to go perform an activity. The person is about to go and perform the mitzvah of kibbutz Baruch. This is when you come, can you make me a cup of tea? Person walks over and says, yes. Just a moment before I do that, you stop and you close your eyes and you say, and and you stop and you start saying minutes. How is the person who's standing there opposite you going to feel? They're going to feel like that. Rav Putner once put very, very sharp. Putner, when he was in hospital and he was sick, one of the Talmidim wanted to come visit him. The mitzvah, the good, whatever. But no, somebody who was, he said, I'm not sure. Right? Meaning, the reason we do mitzvot ben adam lechavero is because we're commanded them. Hashem commanded us in such a way, we need to treat other people with respect. We need to, why? Because that person standing opposite us is creative and telling them, okay, now I'm deserving of respect, they're deserving of chesed, they're deserving of the honor or whatever it is. And there's a that if you're going to look at a person, you're going to stop, you're going to make a bracha, you turn, there's something which formalizes, something which turns it into, takes away from the actual honor and the actual kindness that you're giving to the person, become just a ritualistic observance. Therefore, says the Sfakimet, we don't make a bracha. Same thing he says regarding tzedakah, same thing regarding matzonot levyonim, same thing perhaps regarding mishloach manot. We'll see in a moment soon. What is the point of the what is the purpose of the mitzvah mishloach manot? To increase shalom barayut between people, to increase companionship and friendship. We're not going to stop that and interrupt that by making a bracha and saying he ratzim before the person. So that's one interesting answer. I don't think factors which come into play as to why there are not two brachot. But that is that's one answer which is true. So we have 3 brachot which are said before reading the Megillah. Next for the Ashkenazim, 3 at night and 3 in the morning, 5 and 3 at 9 and 2 in the morning. There is also a bracha after reading the Megillah, page 271. Says the Gemara continues, le'achareha ma'in levarim. After the bracha, after the reading, what bracha do we say? Then we're going to get back. Then we've got the whole thing. It says Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. And then some here sort of like Harav Rivenu Adani Rivenu Temet Rivenu Nifla Nifla Shalem Kumol Kol Rivenu Hashem Kol Hashem Nifla Nifla Tzavayhem. That's opinion number 1. Opinion number 2. Rabbi Kenigsberg says we say before, mention it again. Rav Papa over here, you see this in a number of places. We have 2 different opinions around which bracha should be said. Rav Papa says you say both, and you find this in other places. Regarding the bracha b'shem yatzah, rofeko basar. One opinion says you say rofeko basar. One opinion says you say mafli b'asot. Says Rav Papa. Rofeko basar mafli b'asot. Rav Papa is always the one who says you say both. He doesn't want to get into machloket out of reverence and respect for both sides. For the sages, he said we say both, and that is why it says Rabbi Kenigsberg, when we have a siyam, we mention the names of all the children of Rav Papa. Why Rav Papa of all people? Because Rav Papa was somebody who had such reverence without guests to come in, and that was why he was so fair that all of his children were without guests coming in as well, and that is something that we try and do. In any event, that is the bracha that we have over here after the Megillah. Says the Shulchan Aruch, if the person, for whatever reason, did not say the bracha before or after, they still fulfilled their own. When should we say it? Very possible. And now, says the Rama, regarding this bracha, says the Rama, should be said together with the tzibur, together with the menu, right? The brachot before, which are ordinary birkot and mitzvot, when a person does a mitzvah, they do it by themselves, they do it in public, whatever it is, they say the brachot. This bracha is something different. This bracha says Rama can only be said in public. Why is that? Source number 15 says the Aruch HaShulchan. Katav Rabbeinu Rama. The bracha shelacharei einayim v'tzibur k'mishnon quotes the Rama, and he says, "Yesh lomar tam zekevan ve'ena shayich ha'Megillah." And I hear for the Mishum Pirsumenis. Says the Aruch HaShulchan. This bracha, Rabbi Rebbeinu, this is not an ordinary Birkat HaMitzvah. We've already said that. We always say bracha, also over Asiyatan. We always say bracha before we fulfill the mitzvah. So what is this bracha after it? He said it's not directly connected. It is a special bracha of thanksgiving. It is a bracha of Pirsumenis. And therefore, it was established in such a way where you have Yisrael, where you have the public, and where it can be publicized. So there's a bit of a discussion. He himself, the Rosh Hashanah, disagrees. He argues a bit of a discussion whether this bracha of Arabic rebellion can be said with less than 1 million or not. And the Bureau accounts over the page talks about it as well. And this is one of those places, by the way, where we say, yeah, Sibor does not necessarily mean a million in the halachic sense. The idea here is that there's Sumim Yisa. So discussion for this matter, you need 10 people, but you don't need 10 people of 1 million. Could it be you need 10 men or you need 10 women? That is also considered public, and that is also considered Sumim Yisa. So he says that there are opinions that one could still say the bracha then. There are different opinions, and everybody should follow the minhag regarding that. Now, page 272 at the bottom, source number 17 says the Gemara again in Megillah, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Nashim. Well, all the mitzvot of Purim as well. Women are obligated as well, just as men are. Even though we might have said this is a mitzvah seisha man drama. This is a positive time about mitzvah. It's a positive mitzvah. It occurs at a specific time, which is only in Purim, night and during the day, as we discussed. Generally speaking, we say women are exempt from positive time about mitzvah. However, we have the principle which applies here, applies in a number of other places regarding others. Again, it says since they were also part of the miracle, when Chazal established these mitzvah, they said women would be part of them as well. What does that mean? Is a machloket amongst the Rishonim. Does it mean meaning that they were also under threat? And they will also say, and they also need to give thanks. Right? We say that Haman wanted to destroy everybody, children, old people, men, women, etc. Or does it mean that they were an instrumental part of creating that nest, of bringing about that salvation of Esther? So either way, those are the two understandings in the Rishonim of what Afen Hayu means, and therefore we say that women are also obligated and to hear the Megillah both during the day and at night. All right, let's move on now to page 277. What happens, actually before that 276, what about children? What about bringing children together Megillah? So the Shulchan Aruch said that it's a minhag tov lavi ktanim u'ktanot b'shma mikra Megillah. It is a good minhag to bring children like bring them to come and hear the Megillah. So long as they don't make noise. Source number 28 says the Mishnah Berurah, page 276. The words coming from the Megillah. Nowadays, this is not like he said it was the reading days of Mishnah Berurah. He said, "Shenavashim naturally in the name of Al-Benin." The kids come to school, they have the lesson, and make noise, and can't listen. Why? They just come so they can make a noise during the name of Haman. He says, if you're a father or mother, you bring your kids to the school just so that they can make a noise. That's not the mitzvah. That's not why you bring. Children, but they should come, they should listen to the Megillah. If that's the minhag, by the way, not everybody, there's not for that. There's no mitzvah, not the right to Ramadan, to make a noise during the Ramadan, and there's a minhag here. Not all the poskim, there were some poskim were vehemently opposed to this minhag, they said it was wrong. If you have that minhag to make a bit of noise, okay, that's fine. You need to listen to the rest of it. That's not the reason that bringing the that is not appropriate. They need to come and they need to hear and they need to listen to all the words. That brings us on to the next point. What happens if a person misses some of the words? And often it can happen in children. Again, I'm not sure what the minhag is here, but you go places where they make a big, and there are all sorts of creative things which people have. I was once in a shul where they had lights. The lights turned red and everybody could make a noise. The lights turned green and everybody stopped. Yeah, you can imagine how much people actually listen to what they were meant to do. But the point is sometimes the Valkyrie will go back and will say the words again. We're still making a noise. Sometimes he won't. So sometimes everybody made a noise of the word Haman, and by the time you actually hear the Valkyrie speaking again, you've missed a word, or you've missed two words. Now, you have to hear every single word of the Megillah. If a person has missed one word, they've not fulfilled the mitzvah. Look at source number 30. Shota Rashba, She'elam, B'kriyat HaMegillah, Mitzarech HaShomei HaChaveh, B'chol Teva V'Teva V'Shmiyato. Does a person need to hear every single word? Person have to have intention. Every single word of the Megillah answers the Rashba. אבל במה שמסתפק לך, אם השמיט בה הקורא אפילו תיבה אחת, אם חוזר לה. So it's just, I'm not talking about a passage. One word you use. Not just if you miss one. If you miss one word, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah of Megillah. Thankfully, there is a solution. Look at the Shulchan Aruch in source number 29. Shulchan Aruch says, "Tarech lekotzah kula umitoch haktav." By the way, this was a question I'm sure it was discussed here as well. Over the last few years with COVID and everything, there was this question about where there were times when people were not able to come to shul. There were times when people were not able to hear a live reading of the Megillah, and the question was raised: could you hear over Zoom? Could you hear a reading over a recording? Definitely not, because it needs to be live. But it was still going back to discuss whether one could be yotzei the mitzvah by hearing via a microphone. And then there was discussion regarding Zoom based on some of the same principles. One of the problems with the Muslim race, sometimes you have, especially if you have a weak internet connection, never happened to anybody with that. But sometimes you're on a Zoom call or something, and something cuts out. It cuts out. You miss a word. So that was aside from the concerns of whether that is considered hearing and reading live. But in any event, so there's the Shulchan Aruch number 29. So we don't like that. So you need to hear. You need to read the entire Megillah. You need to read it from Niktav. You need to read it from the scroll. If you read it by heart, or you read it from Chumash or something like that, you have not fulfilled the obligation. So that should take you should have it in front of you so you can follow it. If you need to hear the Megillah from kosher ground, that is whole. That is at least more than half. The majority of the reading. You missed the word, you missed a pasuk, even if you went up to half of the Megillah, right? But if you missed a minority, and a minority of the words were read by al-peh, were read orally, were read by heart, or read from the printed version, then that is okay. You've still fulfilled the mitzvah. You still have to get everything in the correct order. Okay, so essentially what that means is somebody's listening, somebody's sitting, and this is one of the reasons why what's going to say that a person should have the text in front of them. There are those people, even when they're not reading, they like to have an actual klaf of the Megillah in front of them for the street. And you're listening, and the Valkyrie is reading, and he's reading from a kosher klaf, and that is fine. Again, everybody made a big noise at Haman, you missed the last word, so you say, so you're reading along. You say the last word, you read that word that you didn't hear, and that would be fine.
Bigger issue with the vehicle is if you're going to be improving itself, the whole is very close to the radio stations.
Right. So yes. So again, that would be the same problem. Meaning the Megillah needs to be read from a kosher Megillah from a class.
You say the other situation totally. Can you read it?
So they have a question. So they're the Muslim discussed. Somebody where it was impossible, it's extenuating circumstances, and one is unable to really have it read from a class. What should you do in such a situation? So what's better? So reading from a text which is PDF, which is certainly not the mitzvah, or then to hear it over Zoom, to hear from somebody else reading. Now that has its own issues and its own questions which you raise it. And I'm not getting into it now, and I'm not giving a psak. You have to be so careful. There was one rabbi in England who told me he had written a psak for a certain community that had asked him. They said, "Can we read during COVID? Can we read by Zoom?" And he said to him, "You have to go and you have to hear from a kosher class. You have to hear it in person. for those people who are unable to and are extenuating circumstances. So then, yes, you can hear this. He gets a phone call from somebody else in a different country, in a different community, because I heard your psak that you said the hashekel we can read from we can go to Hashem, we don't have to have a reading in verse. And he had written it and said exactly so. So if you're very careful what we say, and people often hear what they want to hear and want to listen to what the rabbi actually said. But so in that circumstance, probably the person does not have a class, the person cannot go and cannot hear in person. So probably the next best thing would be to hear via Zoom or one of these meetings from somebody who's reading out from it. That would be preferable to just reading out on the question. Where else this comes up, by the way, was with the Shabbat Zachor we mentioned before. We have a mitzvah and a discussion what precisely we know the Torah says. We have to remember the mitzvah of Amalek. We have to remember the mitzvah to wipe out Amalek. We have to remember what they did to us. Chazal established for us that the way we fulfill this mitzvah is by reading once a year from the Torah on the Shabbat before Purim, bring from Shabbat Zachor. There are different opinions. There are poskim who say that one needs to hear from the Sefer Torah. There are poskim who say that it's enough to read it there from Chumash. There it's much simpler. If one was unable to say that you read from Chumash. And what else we could say is that although Chazal established ideally that the mitzvah of Zachor should be fulfilled before the Shabbat before Purim, right? There's no limit. It has to be done once a year. If one was unable to, in England at the time, I think, remember now, but I think Ashur was closed. Shabbat Zachor, we did not have a reading. But we came later on in the year. What say? We have the story of Amalek. It's told again in the Torah. If the Baal Koreh then has in mind, and the Tzibur has in mind, when they hear that reading, they still fulfill the mitzvah of Zachor. There's a very interesting tshuva. I think it's like Rabbi Sofer, who asks the following question. It says Shabbat Zachor we need to hear once a year. So what happened when you have a Shana Mu'veret? How do we define a year? If a year is 12 months, and then you have a Shana Mu'veret, you have an extra month, you have 13 months in between from one Shabbat to the next. Therefore, does everybody have an obligation? Parshat Ki Tetzei to have in mind for Parshat. Yes, there are poskim who say no. Say a year means a year. It's loved up for 12 months. But that is something to come. So, but regarding certainly barring any extenuating circumstances, one needs to hear it from read out live from.
Question of some people who are not fluent in Hebrew, they'll be listening to the Megillah, if you're following English. So does hearing mean following each word, or you're hearing it, but you're also reading it?
That's an interesting question. For those on Zoom who may not have heard the question was, if somebody is listening to the Megillah in Shul, but they are reading along in English, so what does listening mean? So again, one needs to hear. And the ideal thing is to hear the reading in Hebrew and to be following along in Hebrew with each and every word. So the person is looking at the translation while they're listening, so that they can understand. Again, so long as you hear every word, as long as you have in mind to hearing what's being said, that would be fine. But if one misses some of those words, what we're talking about now, is that a hint?
No.
We're almost there. So we know what happens. So says the Mishnah. He says, "Sarif mikrota kula." He says, "Who did kuva?" This is Ma'akim. Even with 11, cannot perform the Islam. Then we have all of the Megillah. That Rona Muslim, even if you wish one word. So John will find it. Things are almost given on. If you left one word, you're not fulfilled. You engage in other again. So it's not that all you have too much. Everybody should be following along with that. People all should have been not a new problem. The kids come to show to make a big noise for our man. Say, you show me smart, family work match. There might be, you won't hear all the words, but you're saying match the way our family. You can read the words on the Chumash, ask them to prepare, if they're not from that, a few words here and there, that is fine. I'm going to say, a person does not need to be obsessed. A person should not be Torah reads all the words, we hear all the words. The person would not need to start second guessing themselves the whole time and thinking, the whole time you're sitting there reading and trying to catch up and trying to read the words and end up not knowing from point to anyway. We can say, we can listen to the end of our Torah. It's it happens on the occasion. One word here, one word there. Verses are not here. So you quickly read that word and continue listening and in order, and that is sufficient, and that way a person gives the person has fulfilled image. Okay, so we're going to stop there. We only got through one of the 4 minutes. So it's next week. You still got some time before Purim. It's good. We didn't wait till the day before. So next week we'll continue doing some more of Hilchot Purim, and then after that we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, everybody.
Yeah. That's why some people you want to catch.
תודה רבה.
Oh, you want to
איפה זה? Very nice. Lieutenant, she lives out in Angela. Taken as a baby.
David, where's the push gift for what?
Somebody found some money in one of the. No.
Yeah,
And they say it's a
I found this, but it did not. So let's see. I mean, no, they heard it because we took this out. We weren't using this.
Just, sorry, excuse me, good morning.
Morning.
Just a reminder, this week is Shabbos Mevorachim, so your.
He's aware.
Your
Pass it from downstairs. Thanks. He's aware. I think this is what I'm getting. Just
And they're not hearing that?
I mean, I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean it's
So I took this off and I was using this and everybody said they could hear it. So I don't know if the problem is here. But you know what? Let's do this. Let's do this. I'm still on it. Did not disconnect.
This is the stuff.
Do we have a meeting?
Yes. Tuesday.
Jacobs, we sat in there, mine,
Session. There's somebody who has he would like to keep. Okay.
That's the case, then they should have to match that. So for the shares, that's probably matching. It's gonna be.
No, this is something.
Because it's a real balance. But they're saying the grandchildren love them to come because they don't want to be in a singles kind of. But whatever we decide, they're coming for election. Doesn't even do that. I mean, we can obviously see through it.
See through it, but it might be. We have to do it.
It's already that's going to be on Shas. They have parents and counselors in Zivugim who are going to speak to them after the separate seated meals. It's going to be very interesting.
But you're right, if you see it said, I'm not coming, then I will grant it.
You too.
A woman from Hilchot Purim. We were meant to. To see what kind.
If you get a chance to speak to the state, that's how.
Be with their cousin. They'll enjoy the meals with us, go to shul, and then they decide to come. They'll hear Rabbi Kenigsberg speak and I'm sure.
They have to come and help us set up.
And then
So they have to come to shul.
the only one will stay. And we have 20. They feel embarrassed to even come. It's like keeping them on the company in the right time.
Yeah.
It's right, Hashem, but everyone needs a push. They are embarrassed. And the boys don't want. I have a one grandson who said it's not the worst thing because they'll meet each other. They have brothers, they have people that they went out. It's not the worst thing. We just have to get some.
I think we have to be careful about pushing our agenda as opposed to